Hey, good morning, everybody. I want to talk about something that I'm seeing a lot of stuff online about different ways to rehab land, and I don't think that there's just one way to do it. I think there's multiple different ways of doing it. And also, too, there's varying different terrains. What might work in one area wouldn't work in another area. But I want to show you some stuff that I found that works really well on my property and how I'm trying to restore this area. And I'll give you some examples right now. So here's one of them. This is a pine tree to where if you see the shade that's underneath it here, look at this grass. It's a heck of a lot better. Oops, don't fall forward there. This grass is a lot taller than all the grass that you see around, for example, like that grass right there. That grass is much shorter. And same with like this stuff here, just tiny little tufts of grass. Whereas this grass is much more developed. If we come over here and look, I can put my hand next to this. You can see just how deep down that goes and how big these pieces of tall grass come up. And tall grass here, and also prairie grass back where I grew up in Kansas, has such an extensive root structure. I'll put an infographic up to show you a couple different ones to show you what they look like. Now, that's why you always want to use native plants in these areas, because the Dust Bowl that happened, I grew up in Kansas. We all knew about it. We all got educated on it. It happened because of the decimation of the prairie grass. And that was replaced with agriculture grass, or not agriculture grass, but just agriculture in general. And the roots from the agriculture are literally like maybe 1/20th of what the prairie grass would do. Same thing with the tall grass here in Arizona. And so what I've found is these areas that provide a little bit of light shade. If you look around, there is actually it looks like a circle around there, and that's because throughout the day there's varying degrees of shade that will happen. Also, too, when the rain hits this, it will hit the top here and then percolate down from the pine tree and help with the ground here. If you look underneath, the pine trees do have enough of sunlight getting through to where you don't have a dead zone underneath the pine trees like you do under some of the junipers, which I'll show you here in a bit. And not all junipers out here are invasive. There are some that are, but there are some that are native, like the Utah's native. I'll show you some cool examples of that. The Rocky Mountain one's native. The Western Juniper is not native. And we'll go around and I'll show you kind of what I mean with the ones that I want to get rid of, and what I'm doing with the tree branches to help provide shade and create what you call like a microclimate. Now, a really good example of a microclimate is right over here. If you look on the ground, some of these where the Western Juniper was, I cut them down, and I'm using those branches for a couple of different things. One, I've got the debris fence over here, which has some of those branches in it. And then before I show you the other thing here real quick, I want to make mention of this. See how there's like this dead zone around here? That happens under some of those juniper trees, and I don't want that. I want to get rid of that. And another thing too is that a lot of people think that, oh, it's a tree, leave it. That's not always the case. You need to take like a pragmatic approach to restoring land. And the reality is that this whole area wasn't all just choked full of trees forever. There were a lot more valleys that were open that had tall grass, and then you would have trees on the sides of the hills and the mountainous areas and all that stuff. And a lot of people just think like, oh, it's nature, just leave it alone. But it's not. That's not always correct. People say nature always does the best things, and that's not true if there's an invasive species that's out competing the other ones. So I'll show you what I mean by that. But over here, I want to show you a microclimate that I created from a Western Juniper that I cut down that had a dead zone all around underneath it. Okay, we come over here and we look at these. So this actually creates what's called a microclimate. And these branches here, if I pull them back, you'll see how this grass here is in much better shape. See how that's all green and looking really good. It's filled in a lot more. Then take a look at like this. Notice the difference? That's very, very, very underdeveloped tall grass. And, it's just not in the best shape. There's a lot more open area. As opposed to here, you can see how that grass has really taken off. I hope that comes good through on the camera. But there's a noticeable difference when you step back and you look at this area compared to that area that has been filled in. And that's strictly due to the microclimates that were caused from me taking these branches and putting them down and allowing this tall grass a couple things. Number one, there's a little bit of shade, so it's not just totally getting beaten down the whole time. So it allows the tall grass to grow and mature better and have a deeper root structure, which in turn aerates the land, causes it to where there's no soil erosion, because it won't blow away at the wind. And Tall grass is literally the best natural, what you would call like a check dam, or any way to slow down the water and get it to go directly into the ground. People say trees are number one. That's not true. Prairie grass and tall grass is the number one of any ecosystem to help keep the ground stabilized, help to keep that groundwater recharged. And what you want to do in a place like Arizona is, the reason why the tall grass is so important is because that's what recharges groundwater and the aquifers. All the streams out here are done by springs. They're not done by snowmelt. And so it's different than the Rocky Mountains. The Rocky Mountains, it's all done by snowmelt, so you don't really need the springs that much because you have this constant melting from those really high peaks that get a ton of snow in the wintertime, a constant melting throughout the year that provides that water. That's not the same in Arizona. Arizona is almost 100%, except for, I would say, what was it, Mount Baldy over by the Navajo or the White Mountain Apache Tribe Reservation. There's a lot of snowmelt that comes off there, but it ends at like, August. So you have, September, October, and then November before it starts to recharge again. So there is a little bit of a lull there. But all the areas around here, Prescott, Flagstaff, Sedona, Ash Fork, Seligman, what are some of the other areas? Pine Top, all those, Strawberry, all those places rely on aquifers being recharged for those streams to flow. And that's why the streams are not flowing out here like they used to, is because the aquifers have been depleted, because a lot of the trees have choked out the ability for tall grass to grow. And so my goal here at my property is to get the tall grass really growing again to help recharge the groundwater, at least on my little parcel. And it's not going to make a huge difference in the overall scheme of things out here. But if all of us landowners out here take this approach to cut down some of the trees that are not native to this area, then that could help in getting the environment turned back in the right direction. Because when the overgrazing happened, it wasn't actually done by cattle, it was done by sheep. Now, sheep will go all the way down to the ground and decimate the tall grass. Cows don't do that. Cows would go down and leave about 2 to 3 inches of tall grass left, and then it can regenerate. And so that's why if you don't have too many cows on property, cows can be very good for the environment. Now let's go down here. I want to show you an example of a Utah juniper that is massive. It's an old growth juniper. I've got 2 of them right next to each other that have created incredible microclimates underneath them, and just how much that differs from, let's say, this area right here. So we'll use this as an example, and then we'll go over to these 2 trees, which I think are the 2 coolest trees that I have on my property, and I'll show you the difference. Now these are the 2 trees. We've got this one right here and that one right there. As far as I can tell, they're Utah junipers. They are extremely old. They're the oldest trees that I have on my property. The bases of them, that way, and then we'll go to the other one, are anywhere. If that one I measured, the diameter of it, just across like this, on the biggest side is 4 feet across. On that one, it's 6 feet across. Now I want to come under here and I want to show you how these create an incredible microclimate, not only for trees and for grass, but also for animals. So you can see we've got baby pine trees growing. Got another baby pine tree right here. This is not a dead zone underneath here at all. This is actually really nutrient-rich soil, and you can see different tall grasses. This is like this year-round. Okay, even in the dead of summer around here, I'll have these green tufts of grass that'll grow up. It's real healthy. It's nice and cool underneath here. It's a stark difference than even just standing 10 feet away from over there, over to this section. And so these are the trees that you want, and these are the ones that have been here forever. This is the type of bark that the Native Americans used to help build the layers inside of their roof structures that were watertight. And I've been to Native American sites to where you can see the cross section of the roof, and you'll see that in there as one of the layers. There's like 5 different layers, and that shaggy style of bark there is what they use as one of the layers in it. But these are the type of trees that you want, and you want to let them grow and continue to do their thing. Because this entire area, like I said, nice and cool underneath here. Even in the dead of summer when it's hot out here, I'll come to this tree and sit underneath it. I'm like, it's at least 10 degrees cooler underneath here. And so this is what would be considered a microclimate, okay? The one thing about the junipers that a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about how you need to have them is that they unfortunately do have one of the most extensive root systems, and they'll branch out into areas like this and rob this area of being able to have the tall grass grow, because the tall grass can't compete with the root structure of the junipers. It actually goes deeper than what the tall grass can do. Tall grass can go down to anywhere about 10 feet, maybe even a little bit longer. Junipers can go much deeper than that. And so what they do is they tap into the groundwater that typically the tall grass would do. When there's too many junipers in an area, they'll tap into the groundwater that the tall grass would use to grow, and that robs the tall grass of its ability to prosper. And so that has a detrimental effect on the environment. And as a result of it, that's where when the junipers take over an area, the tall grass tends to retreat. And you'll have some underneath the trees like this, but you won't ever have those areas grow up to where it used to be the tall grass that was waist high. And that's what you want. Now, I grew up in an area of Kansas, and I went to college in Manhattan, which is Kansas State University. There's a place out there called the Kanza Prairie, and the Kanza Prairie is one of the most biologically diverse places on planet Earth. It's also one of the prettiest places you'll ever go. Con Naste, a long time ago, listed it as one of the top 7 places in the world to watch a sunset, and that's 100% true. It's an amazing area. There's also a place out there, there's a national park that no one really knows about. It's called the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve, and I'll put a link in the video description below for y'all to check out. If you're ever driving through Kansas and you're on I-70 and you're like, this drive's boring, I want to see a pretty part of the state, get off on exit 313, which is the Manhattan exit, Council Grove exit as well. Go south and drive all the way to, is it Matfield Green? No, Cassidy is where the toll road is. Go all the way down to Cassidy and drive back. That's called the Flint Hills Scenic Byway. You will understand once you see that how tall grass creates such a pretty environment. And there are rivers and streams everywhere out there, and a lot of them start in that Tallgrass Prairie Preserve. It's one of the last places on the entire North American continent where that tall grass was never eradicated. Now, what happened in Kansas, like I said initially when I first started this video talking about the Dust Bowl, is that the reason why the Dust Bowl happened was, one, you had a complete eradication, almost complete eradication of the prairie grass, which was replaced with agriculture. Agriculture roots did not have the same effect on the ground as helping recharge aquifers. A lot of the streams dried up, and then there was a drought. Okay, it's the same thing with like areas that have trees where they go and clear cut trees, and all of a sudden the precipitation stops happening out there. That's the same thing. The one thing about the junipers is that with how much mass they have, let's go over and look at this tree right here. With how much mass they have, you would think like, oh, okay, this is a great tree. You know, it's pulling water out of the ground, it's evaporating, all that stuff, which is somewhat true. However, when it rains, so much rain hits this and stays on these branches and then evaporates from the branches and never actually hits the ground. Okay, that's the biggest problem with the juniper tree and with the invasive species. And when you get so many junipers in an area like this, the tall grass, if you see here, is just, it's nothing. It's nothing like it should be. It should be really tall. And there should be juniper trees here, but not all these juniper trees. This is way too many. And when I was doing trail work in the forest in Colorado, I was picking up trash for a long time on different trails when I was out there doing a full-time nomad thing. I went to a seminar it wasn't a seminar, it was actually a training for these different groups that were interested in doing trail maintenance. And the biologist for the San Isabel National Forest, he said something that really struck me. He said, we could cut down 2/3 of the trees in the San Isabel National Forest and the health of the forest would greatly improve. And I was like, really? I wonder what he means by that. And what can happen is things can overgrow, and then it's a detriment effect to the environment because everything in there becomes sick. And that's true in this environment. You know, if you have too many trees and there's no way for the groundwater in this environment to recharge, since we don't have snowmelt runoff happening, how's the water supposed to recharge the springs? Explain that to me. You know, a lot of people say, don't cut down any of your trees. I've had people say it on my channel, don't cut down any of your trees. They're wrong. They're dead wrong. I've seen the results of how my land is starting to improve, especially on the upper section of my land where I'm starting to thin out the trees and I'm going through and I have a methodical approach to put back in the tall grass, and my pine trees are exploding now that I've got the scrub brush, which was the main thing that I had to remove, and some of the junipers, because those will outcompete those other plants due to the extensive root system. Okay, now here's the other juniper that I was talking about. Look at how beautiful this tree is. This is an amazing tree. I have no idea how long this has been here. I mean, it's got to be hundreds of years old. But same thing with this one. You know, you come underneath here and you look, and It's a nice, cool environment. It's not quite as cool as the other one. The other one's much more extensive with its size. I mean, if we look over, look how big that tree is, and it goes all the way down here and everything. But this one here still has, you know, you come underneath here, I can put my hand underneath here, way different temperature compared to out here, okay? And another thing about this too is this is a great area for animals to bed down, you know? So they're coming in here, they're sleeping underneath these. You can see areas, especially like right over here, there's a depression in the ground. Obviously some animal kind of burrowed that out and tucked in there and made that their home. And this area right here, from that section to that section, is 6 feet across. So it's a huge tree and has a bunch of benefit to the environment. One thing is that the pine trees don't take nearly as much water as a juniper. A large juniper tree will take 6,000 gallons of water per year to keep it going. And so what I thought was, well, okay, what I'll do is I'll systematically go through here. I'll remove some of the large junipers that are not native to the area, keep the ones that are native, and then see how that works. And so far I'm seeing positive results in it with both tall grass and pine tree development. The pine trees I love. I think they're beautiful, and they don't expel as much pollen as junipers, which I'm horribly allergic to. So it benefits me to get rid of those junipers that are invasive and allow the opportunity for the tall grass to heal itself in this region. This is a perfect example of the type of juniper trees that I like to remove. Number one, there are tons of different branches on here, which when I limb this up, I can put it on the ground and create these microclimates like I'm doing around here to help the tall grass regenerate. Because if you look at those, I mean, just look at this one right here. Look at the difference just in that little mound right there, the tall grass, compared to this area right here. And then same with down here. Look at the tall grass that's coming up through that compared to this right next to it. So that's proof right there that if you create these microclimates, when you limb these trees and allow the tall grass to heal itself, it'll come back. And then that root structure gets much more dense and penetrates in the ground further and helps the groundwater to get down and recharge those aquifers, which is what's needed for this environment. We look underneath here at this tree that I was just showing you. It's a dead zone, okay? Now granted, there's mulch on the ground, but how much water do you think when it hits this tree is actually getting to here and penetrating the mulch? Because this mulch is really thick. Let me show you. How much water do you think it takes, and also too, it's hard. How much water do you think it takes to get to where it gets down to this? Now filling the soil, it's cool, but we're also having about freezing temperatures at night, but it's dry, okay? With all the water that we just had coming through here, you would think if that mulch held the groundwater in, that it would be wet. The problem is with these trees, when the water comes down, there's so much moisture that's held on the leaves itself, it evaporates. And I read a study, I'll have to confirm this, but it was anywhere from, I think, 83 to 87% of the water never touches that ground, because it gets on the branches. If it drips down, there has to be so much water that soaks through that mulch to get to the ground, it never hits it. So that's why I want to get rid of these and create those dead zones and bring them back to life by putting a tall grass in there. Hey, check this out on a side note. This is a century plant, okay? They take 10 to 30 years to mature to where they start to bloom. And this one's about to start blooming. These have these huge shafts that come out of here and create massive, massive pillars in the sky. And then they spread their seeds from those things once they bloom. And here's an example of one that's really been blooming for a while. And it's amazing. Just the architecture of these plants, I think, are really cool. So check this out. These are as sharp as can be. But what's going to happen is this will come up and then it flowers. It opens up and flowers at the top. And then it dies. It only flowers once. What a cool looking plant. We've got that one there. We've got another one going right there. There's that one. Got a fly kind of bothering me. There's another one over here. Let me show you this. That one. Got another one over here next to my water container. Let's go over here. I'll show you that. Right there. So it's going to be lots of stuff blooming around here soon, which I'm really pleased about. Another thing too is when I removed this juniper that was here and then also started to trim back some of the branches on this juniper, all of these plants here, the century plants and my pine tree, took off. And then if you see here, I've got this ground covered with grass or with some hay, and this is hay that I just harvested from my own property here. But I'm doing that for an opportunity. I'm doing that to give this tall grass that I planted an opportunity to grow. Because last year I put this down and it started to grow, but then as soon as it got hot, it died. And the reason for that was I didn't have it covered. Now that I have it covered, you can see there's tall grass there. There's tall grass right here that's growing up. Tall grass right there. So little tufts coming up all over the place. And that's going to fill in this area and help for the ground erosion and make sure that when the wind comes through, the dust doesn't blow away, or the wind doesn't blow away the topsoil. So I'm really pleased with what's going on at my property. I think all of the research that I've done into how to work with the land has starting to pay off. And this is another area where I just removed that juniper tree. It was one of the Western Junipers, giving these other plants an opportunity to grow. And then once I get the rest of these roots out from the little bushes that are around here, is because what will happen is I want to keep the root structure in, but I want to continue to cut off like the tops of these that continue to regenerate. After a while, they'll go ahead and die, and then that root structure stays in there and helps for the soil to keep it in place. And then I'll go through and I'll plant tall grass all throughout this section here, because if you look, it was a big dead area underneath that tree. I mean, look at how massive that dead area was. And the only things that were growing was that tree there, but it was dang near dead. And it's really come back in the past month or two. And then this grass here, it was almost dead too, and now it's really starting to flourish. And so it's all about competition for resources. And there's only a limited amount of resources to go around in a climate like this. And so I feel like with all the water catchment that I have, coupled with the soil, trying to get those barren areas back up to where they have tall grass in it and recharge the groundwater, just at least in my section, what's going to happen is we're going to see this, and if we have a good monsoon season, we'll see this area really take off. And that's what I'm hoping for. Another area I want to work on is right over here. I want to show you my plan. I've got my different swales that I've built. The tall grass in here is all starting to come back with the water that runs off in here from a washing machine, which we got to do some laundry today. Same with over there. This canal that comes down actually has a diversion where it splits off and goes into that one too. And then once I get this out of here, this is what will be the row where I put my different fruit trees around here. And one thing I would like to do is that you see there's a dead area underneath this tree. Is a big one because this tree was massive before I started limbing it back. And then there's a dead area right here too. This was actually all choked out with those bushes that I had, those gamble oak and bushes like this right here that just don't allow anything to grow underneath it because it puts so much debris on the ground. The one thing that's nice about that though is that debris over time, decomposed and made a real soil rich area. And so what I'm going to do is take a lot of these rocks like this and make a raised area. And I just got seed in that is called mountain meadow wildflower mix. And it's a mix of native Arizona and northern New Mexico wildflowers. And so I'm going to populate this entire area right here with like a wildflower garden. And then I think underneath here, I'm going to do some wildflowers, but I'm going to do a lot of tall grass because eventually these trees will come down when I build my place up here, because this is going to be a section of where the house will be. So just kind of want to give you all an overview of my thought process of how I'm going through and regenerating my land. Not every tree is a good tree. I see that in some comments on my channel when I'll talk about cutting down trees, like don't ever cut down trees. I disagree. And I hope that I laid out the reasons why. I'll put some links in the video description below if y'all want to check out some studies from different areas like Oregon, Texas. And these are from biologists, okay? They are from people that study this for a living, and they're not beholden to any industry. I don't think. I mean, they're just going through and putting forth their studies. But the misnomer I think is that this area has always been wooded like this. It hasn't. The tree density has gotten a lot worse and gotten much more intense over the years, and that crowds out the tall grass, which recharges the aquifers, which if that's not there, the streams can't flow. So I just want to give you my 2 cents about what I think is best to at least do on my land. Now, land down the road that's 500 feet lower in elevation, it's a completely different ballgame. You have different strategies to work with that. But up here in more of the mountainous area, from the research that I've done and all the reading that I've done over the years, this is what makes sense for me. And this is the strategy that I'm trying out here to see if it'll work. So hopefully this summer with the monsoon season, and if it's a good one, we'll see massive results, and I can show you all my work and the progress that's been made from it. So, all right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a good Tuesday. We'll see you in the next video.